working in the Carolinas, picking cotton. As I was told once by my grandmother, you can make more money picking citrus than you could picking cotton. Wherein with cotton, you would probably make 40 cents on 100 pounds. So it's a lot of cotton for 40 cents. So that you could pick oranges by the box, sometime 75 cents a box, 50 cents a box.
Moses Norman and Valentine Hightower, they came from South Carolina looking basically for better work.
Alan Frank's family, the McNeelys, you had the Browns,
and then also Jack and Annie Hammeter family. Those are the earliest families that we can tell. And who was July Perry?
July Perry was a very powerful black man.
July Perry lived here and was a businessman, a prosperous individual who would contract laborers to come into West Orange County to harvest the citrus grove.
Mose Norman was a friend and neighbor of July Perry's, who was also a labor broker. Mose Norman was a little bit more ostentatious about his wealth. He drove a very nice car. He made no apologies about being successful.
In 1920, there was a thriving African-American community, almost half of the city of Ocoee, based on the census.
What's happening in Florida months leading up to that election day back in 1920?
Leading up to that time, black people were becoming equally or more successful than the whites.
But I would say there's three factors that are really starting to add to this pot. It's like a boiling cauldron. And what those are start with World War I. Of course, World War I, a lot of young black men go to World War I. And part of the belief was that if we go and we fight for this country, we're proving we're invested. We are here, we're fighting like everybody else. If we come home, maybe there will be better equality.
You had the Republicans courting the black vote.
Black women during this time, they're the organizers. I mean, they are really starting to say, like, we deserve this, and when our men come home, it's about equality. So you've got all of these different things sort of happening in Florida, and what happens is you start to see a rise in white supremacy and Ku Klux Klan activity specifically throughout the state, trying to essentially quash the votership throughout the state. Who are the characters in or around Ocoee who are trying to rally and encourage blacks to vote in November? The people who are most often cited are Judge John Chaney and W.R. O'Neill. They are Republican, and they are actively seeking, trying to help black voters get registered. They receive a letter from the KKK stating you had better stop offering lectures to the black community about exercising their legal right to vote, or else.
July Perry and Mose traveled back and forth to Orlando and coming up with, strategies to get people to vote.
He had black and white folks working for him 100 years ago. He had the audacity to organize his community to vote in the presidential election.
It could change the dynamics of politics, and many blacks would be loyal to the Republican Party because of Abraham Lincoln freeing the slaves.
Take us back to that day, November 2nd, 1920, and just tell us how that day started.
Oh, excitement, especially for those who had paid their poll taxes. This is the big day. We're going to finally be able to vote.
They had a system set up where there'd be a screen in downtown Orlando. That screen was used to update people about the election results. In the case of the massacre, it was also used as a call to arms to bring white, able-bodied men in order to assist with what they called the riot.
We know that just days before there had been a large Ku Klux Klan march through Orlando. 200 to 500 people is the estimate. And the sentiment, of course, was you had better not try to vote if you are black and living in this area.
So initially when Mose Norman goes to vote, there's some dispute about whether he initially brought a gun or brought one later. But he is refused. At that point, he goes to see Judge Chaney, who had assisted him and others in registering to vote.
Judge Chaney was like a savior. He was a man of great standards and statutes. I don't think he's been acknowledged enough for his role, his sacrifices. And he says to Moses Norman, you go back over to there and you're all going to vote. You're going to vote today. You're going to vote. You paid your poll tax. What are they talking about? Go back. He gets into a fight or scuffle, and I think he's struck upside the head. So he's heading out of Dodge now. He goes by and says to July, hey, man, I'm out of here. I'm gone.
And then later on, a posse, and then later a larger mob went there. The posse included Clyde Pounds, Sam Salisbury, and at some point, Frank Gordon. Clyde Pounds is someone who a lot of sources say deputized the posse. Former Mayor Lester Dabb's thesis said it was not Clyde Pounds, but instead Frank Gordon who led the posse. It transformed what would have otherwise been a rogue group of angry people into really a government actor.
Locally and in Ocoee, in Orange County, a lot of the local politicians and the law enforcement were members of the KKK.
And what happens at Perry's house?
All hell breaks loose. Lieutenant Sam Salisbury goes there and with the posse, and they tell him they're looking for Mose Norman. And
we told his daughter, who was 19, Caritha at the time, he said, look, honey, look at me, honey. It's not time to panic. Listen to me, honey. I am not going to make it. I'm not going to make it. Get your mother and your little brothers, and you get out of here. You go as fast as you can, as far as you can. Because I am not going to make it.
A few men of the city of Ocoee came to my great-grandfather's and my grandmother's home and began a conversation from outside. In that conversation, he pretty much was telling them, I don't know what you're talking about, and no one's in here but me and my family, and I'm not coming out there.
That was a terrible day, my dad said. Well, the news had gotten around that July Perry and Mr. Norman Knowles, they were going to vote. And they knew that the whites did not want the blacks to vote. My granddad, and I imagine maybe some of the others, had made a plan. And they knew that if he could get his children and them to Plymouth, they would be safe and welcome.
I remember her telling me that the people came in and they were surrounding the house and how they had to lay low as they started shooting. So she just wanted me to know your grandmother was in this situation and that she was shot.
Caritha is injured. She later shows, I believe it's in an Orlando Sentinel article, where the bullet wound had been in her arm.
She said there was so much gunfire, you could see the tracers of the bullets flying through the house, just one side to another. They were all heading toward, I guess, the back of the house or toward a door. And she said this door had a cat hole in it. And she said it was large enough for people to, of their size to be able to crawl in and crawl out. While on the inside, she was absolutely distraught. And she was terrified, And yet, at the same time, she said courage was kicking in at the same time. Necessity, survival.
I get emotional about it because they had to run.
All right. I'm letting this story run and letting you hear the audio of how once upon a time in America, we was not able to vote as a Black American, It was forbidden that and you see from what you just heard that they went out their way to stop these group of individuals from getting to the polling place, and they shooting into the house to intimidate these individuals. As a black culture, we done came through so much, you know. I was listening to an audio today that suggested that we as a culture has endured so much hate and discrimination during the slavery trade way back when. He was just basically, the guy name is Unapologetic, you know, and he was saying that he don't know a race that could have survived what black folks survived back in the day of slavery. Now, you could look at what Hitler did to the Jews in Germany. You know, it's like everybody got their massacre that they went through, their culture. Everybody done went through some hardship. But here's my problem. Is reparations being allocated for these folks? You know, for instance, the Indians, they get to live on their reservations, tax free. They get some kind of compensation if you are full blooded Indian from whatever tribe that your clan came from, or your ancestry, whatever that the ancestry that you identify with. It's a movie called Killers of the Flower Moon, and it showed how in Oklahoma, where Indians were living on a reservation, and they were, I'm assuming, building homes for their tribes, and oil came up out the ground. So everybody that was part of that reservation is instantly rich. So what surprised me about the movie was the people that was in charge of issuing out these people checks and their compensations were Caucasian people. So I was like, well, how did that happen? But I guess they were, I guess the people issuing out the benefits to the Indians monthly on their land and reservation. I guess they were government employees representing the government, I'm assuming. And but it showed blatantly how Caucasian, groups of outlaws that blended in and acted like that they were for, and for the community, on the reservations. They were going around killing off the Indian men. So therefore, you left a reservation for all, I mean, a lot of women. So now they were targeting women to marry Caucasian men. That was part of this this wicked group, which was the authority of the town. Robert De Niro played the guy that were orchestrating. He was the puppet master. It's a very good movie. You guys got to see it. The guy that made Goodfellas made this movie. Killers of the Flower Moon. Leonardo DiCaprio played De Niro nephew who married the Indian girl, and what they would do once they married them, they inherited automatically benefits because they were married, and then if they died, the estate was left to the spouse. They strategically killed off the men and eventually poisoned a lot of the women, and these Caucasian men inherited the estates of Native American families. And that's, I feel, how these oil families of today got in power because of that whole dynamic of I'm speaking on. So whatever oil family that got old money, may have and perhaps been a part of the massacre of the natives, So it's like, but my point is, fast forward to this day and time, 2024. Indians on Indian reservations, they get their own land, they get compensated, these people get checks to help them live, and nobody want to give black folks no kind of reparation for none of the suffering that we endured. You know what I'm saying? And it's just really a shame that the color of your skin is hated so much. And it's crazy, and it's just like somebody was saying, why we gotta have Black History Month. So I don't know what contents that person was talking about because we need to talk about these stories, about the Ochiwa, reservation or land in the deep south, and how they trying to go vote and they killed off the whole town, burned the town down, just like uh Black Wall Street. You know what I'm saying? Do your research on Black Wall Street. So funny, they reference Black Wall Street in the movie Killers of the Flower Moon because the movie was based in Oklahoma. And Tulsa, Oklahoma is where Black Wall Street was burnt down and bombed, which were prominent black folks that built their town, educated themselves, and they had their own everything: schools, medical facility, libraries, shopping, markets, and everything. And so they did the old somebody raped a Caucasian woman and they was trying to lynch this guy in the courts. And a gang of black men went down to the court to make sure that the gentleman got a fair trial, and they all waited outside for the verdict to make sure that this man got a fair trial. So a mob showed up, a white mob showed up. And that's how the conflict began. And so the military got involved and dropped the bomb on the whole town to finish up with the ground mob didn't finish. The bomb that would drop on that town from the military, from what history is stating, you know. I might have got my facts wrong, allegedly, let's say that to protect, the channel. But look it up and know your history, know where you came from, so you know where you're going. And we need Black History Month so we can have discussion with our kids. And now in some schools, they want to take slavery and Black history out of the schools. No, no, we need to know our history because our history is American history. You know what I'm saying? And again, why every other race can be compensated, given loans, and get a head start on life because what their ancestors and family, you know, was wrongfully, you know, abused. So somebody lobbied to make it right. And they came to a conclusion, okay, yeah, we did something wrong here in America. So we're going to make sure they get a little something. So why we can't get a little something? Somebody did a study, the unapologetic person that I listened to audio said that he talked to some Indians, of today, and these Native Indian individuals identify with the Native Indian culture, and they had to do blood work because you had to be of a certain percent to get a monetary check benefit for what your ancestors went through, pain and suffering. He says some people get from $1,500 to $3,000, depending on what percentage your bloodline is from whatever tribe you belong to. And if you add that up for like 20 years of your life, that's like 1.8 million. So why they can't give us reparation checks like that for 20 years of our lives? So my thing is, if you ask me, if you just say Black folks, do that include the foreigners that's here, from other countries like African nations? So if you of an African descent, you can't get the reparation. Only American Blacks. Our ancestors come from Africa or any Black person around the world. That's just too many people to give compensation to. Because that's what it sounds like to me. I don't know. So it's just crazy at the end of the day. And whoever hear this video, chime in and give me some feedback. Add to the history of what I'm talking about of any flick, which would be the Black Wall Street or the Ochiwa and, down south, the land that, you know, uh, uh, these families own that was stripped from them because they burnt the town and the houses because these people tried to go vote. It's just we just been done bad over the years, and And then they want to act like we begging for something that we supposed to get rightfully. You know what I'm saying? It's like, you know, it's just not right at the end of the day. You know? So this gonna be my last video for the night. So I hope I did Black history some justice, and I'm eager to hear the feedback. Like, share, subscribe. Streets Finest Podcast. Thanks for joining me.